Kawhi Leonard, my good friend, I really like you, but you may have made the dumbest decision of your entire career. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about when I say this, but unless you live under a rock, I'm talking about Kawhi Leonard choosing to sign with the Los Angeles Clippers over the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, not only did Kawhi sign with the Los Angeles Clippers, but he decided to bring along his good friend Paul George from the Oklahoma City Thunder. The reason I say this is because Kawhi Leonard could have been much better off going to the Lakers instead of the Clippers. Now, I know I get the argument. I see both sides. I get the argument that Kawhi Leonard didn't want to be under LeBron's shadow or under even AD's shadow. I understand that. But let me be real with you for a second. Kawhi Leonard is a great player, don't get me wrong, but I've been seeing a lot of whack comparisons that he's the new Michael Jordan. I mean, people, maybe that's a stretch. I've seen that a couple times, but people are comparing him to LeBron. But I mean, everybody just got to relax. We got to remember that Kawhi Leonard did indeed, not single-handedly, by the way, but did indeed beat the Golden State Warriors. But the Golden State Warriors were not the Golden State Warriors that we all know and hate. Like I said before, from a more morality standpoint, I would say yes, Kawhi Leonard doesn't want to go and make an extreme super team and possibly ruin the NBA all over again. But at the same time, from a personal standpoint, that would have been best for his career, like it or not. He would have been much better off going to the Lakers because he would have been, I don't think he would have been under the shadow of LeBron and AD. I think he would have been just part of the big three. They would have been the big three, and that would have been it. Once again, like it or not, Kawhi Leonard has already been a part of, quote-unquote, a super team. So going to the Lakers for him would not have been too foreign or different because he was already a part of a monster super team. And when he was at the Spurs, or with the Spurs when they won that championship, he was not overshadowed at all. He was actually considered their best player, even though he had that monster three behind him. So I believe he would not have been overshadowed by LeBron or AD in the slightest. So what I think Kawhi pretty much did to himself is basically just throw him into the lottery of who's going to win the championship instead of going to the place that would have damn near guaranteed him a championship. Instead, he just kind of threw another team in the pot by joining the Clippers. And at the end of the day, winning is what you want to do in the league. Winning, that's why you play. That's why you play, is to go to the championship and win the whole thing. And you do that by giving yourself the best chance in the best place. And I don't think Kawhi Leonard has done that for himself. In both championships that Kawhi has been a part of and won, he's had an obscene amount of help with the big three of Parker, Ginobili, and Duncan with the Spurs. And then in this past year's finals, or even playoffs as a whole, he had a ton of help, not only on his team, but he got very fortunate with how things happened to play out for him when it comes to the other teams. These points pertain to the finals most particularly because obviously the Golden State Warriors were not the Golden State Warriors without Kevin Durant or Klay Thompson. Kevin Durant was on the floor for 10 minutes of, I can't remember what game that was off the top of my head, but before he got injured, he was on the floor for 10 minutes, and they had a pretty decent lead, and the Golden State Warriors were like 7 for 7 for threes. And if losing Kevin Durant wasn't enough, they ended up losing Klay Thompson as well. And, I mean, that was pretty much the dagger in the Warriors. That's a morale killer. That's something that kills the vibe in the locker room. I mean, you're down, you're hurt, you're tired. That's going to tear any team apart when you're losing two superstars like that. I know people don't like to hear it because they're all on the hype for Kawhi train, but believe it or not, like it or not, whatever you want to call it, that series would not have been close at all. It probably would have been 4-1, 4-2 maybe, if the Golden State Warriors were completely healthy. That leads to my other point. He is in Kawhi Leonard in the biggest game of the finals, which was the final game. Like it or not, again, I say it, he was outshined in that game. I don't care what you say. He had role players, he had supporting players, bench players such as the man on your screen that came up and played humongous for the Raptors. Let me put the Raptors team numbers right up here on the screen for you. Look at these. I mean, you can't tell me he wasn't outshined. I mean, Fred VanVleet, he went 5 for 11 on three-pointers, and I don't know if you recall, but he hit a couple humongous three-point shots to maintain the lead for the Raptors at the end of that game. And I'm not going to stick on Freddie. I mean, look at Kyle Lowry's numbers. I mean, he had a couple rough games here and there, but I mean, in this game particularly, He came up huge, shooting over 50% from three and shooting over 50% from the field as a whole. So, I mean, even Kyle Lowry and then Pascal Siakam, he played outstanding too. You can't take 50% from three for Siakam. I mean, he played outstanding too. Kawhi Leonard was outshined in Game 6 of the finals this year. So basically, if you haven't caught on yet, what I'm saying is that Kawhi Leonard needs some big help from multiple guys on his team, not just one other guy, such as Pascal Siakam, Kyle Lowry, and Fred VanVleet, or Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, and Tony Parker. He needs help from other teammates, not just one teammate. Now, this is where you as the viewer say, oh, well, he is Paul George now. Well, guess what? That's not enough, and I hate to break it to you, but those two are not enough. And I'm not going to give Patrick Beverley much credit because Patrick Beverley is a defensive player. He's not an offensive player. And in the NBA, defense is not that big of a factor. I hate to break it to you there either. This is a scoring league, not a defensive league. Now, this is where I feel like Kawhi Leonard has gotten a little too big for his britches because he thinks that him and Paul George will be enough to do what they have to do. I mean, I'm not going to discredit Lou Williams and the other bench players they have. I know they have decent depth, but I'm not going to give Patrick Beverley as much credit as other people are. So that basically, in my opinion, is going to leave Kawhi Leonard and Paul George as the front-runner leaders for this team, obviously. I already have touched on Kawhi Leonard needing that extra help from multiple different teammates, and this is where I feel like Paul George will not be able to offer that extra help or the amount of extra help as I feel Kawhi Leonard will need. As much as, like I said, their depth might be there, but it might not be there in the big situations where they need it most. And that's where I feel like Paul George won't be able to pull through in those big situations, such as Game 6 of the NBA Finals, like Kawhi Leonard's bench players or supporting players were able to do for him. Now, if Paul George is supposed to be that second help for Kawhi Leonard, I firmly believe that will not be enough for Kawhi. Now, why I believe this is because Paul George has only been to a conference finals one time. Every other time he's made the playoffs, he's lost in the first or second round or not made it at all. Yeah, the conference finals is a big deal. That is a very big series. Now, when he played in this series, Paul George did indeed face the Miami Heat, like the Miami Heat. But let me tell you how Paul George did against the Miami Heat. They went to 7 games. Game 1, Paul George, 27 points. David West, 26 points. He had some help. They won, or actually, let me correct myself. They lost Game 1, 103-102. Game 2, Paul George showing out again, 22 points. George Hill, 18 points. He had some help again. Once again, the entire team eclipsed 10-plus points. They won that game 97-93. Game 3 comes along. They lose 114-96. Paul George, 13 points. Starting to see a little fall off here. George Hill, 19 points. David West, 21 points. Had some help. Game 4, they win. 99-92. Lance Stevenson drops 20 points. Roy Hibbert drops 23 points. George Hill, 19. The list goes on. But then we hit Paul George with the lowest amount of points for that team with 12 points. Then we get to Game 5. They lose 90-79. Paul George does show out with a 27-point outing, while his teammates did not show out for him. Then Game 6 comes along. They win. Paul George, 28 points once again. Now we get to the most important game of his life. Game 7, they lose 99-76. This is where you're supposed to have the ice in the veins. You're supposed to be clutch. Paul George, you're supposed to come up big when Kawhi Leonard is going to need you. And you've had one chance to do that, and you have shown no ability. Paul George, 7 points, shooting 22% from the field when he was needed most. Lance Stevenson dropping 10 points, George Hill 13 points. The rest is history. Really doesn't matter who else got how many points, but he scored the lowest amount of points for his team in Game 7, shooting 22% from the field. If that's the help that Kawhi Leonard is looking for, they are not going to be too successful. Now I can hear the excuses of they were facing the Miami Heat. Well, I can rebuttal that with they were in the series the whole time, and when Paul George was needed most, he could not pull through. Like the Avatar, he vanished. And there's also the excuse that it was early in Paul George's career, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you can use whatever excuse you want, but this excuse can always be refuted with the fact that Paul George was showing out in different games. Just when he was needed most in Game 7, he was not able to do a single thing, and their team got smothered. At the end of the day, I do really believe that Kawhi Leonard made the absolute wrong choice for himself personally, because he thinks that him and Paul George will be enough to do what it takes to compete against the other great teams in the league. Now, there are multiple great teams, and I think all Kawhi Leonard did is throw another pretty good team into that mix. With the Rockets, if that team stays, who knows what's going on with them, but the Rockets, the Warriors, the Lakers, I mean, the list goes on. The Bucks, there's so many good teams now, and all Kawhi Leonard did was throw another team in that pot instead of putting him in an area where he was almost guaranteed to win, or he had the best shot to win. So I'm sorry, Kawhi Leonard. I do really like you. I enjoyed watching what you did this past season, but I really don't think what you did was smart, where you could have put yourself in the best situation, being the Lakers, to win another championship and to further your legacy. But anyway, thank you for watching. I'll be coming out with more videos. I'm enjoying doing these. But thank you again for watching, and bleh.